Fuzziness?
Your sound, that's all.
Oh, my sound.
All right, but you're good. That's good right now. That don't say anything else. Just for a minute. Okay, good evening. This is Pastor McLaughlin, the pastor of New Life Bible Church. I'm also the senior administrator of New Life Christian Academy. And 57 years ago today, we had the most famous March on Washington, I Have a Dream. And in honor of that, and of course, we are all doing some things to remember that, I decided that let's just sort of go back and take a look at some of the thoughts that, some of the things that may have happened since that time, and see what Dr. King would have thought of these things. It's been 57 years, almost 6 decades that he has left us. I think Henry Dumas said this: the universe shrank when you went away. Every time I thought your name, stars fell from heaven. And so we've thought of you often, Martin, since you went away. And so we're going to ask you to just walk us through, and I'll ask you about some things that happened in the last 57 years. And just want to get your opinion. And so we have MLK, the Spirit of MLK, featuring Stephon Fergurson. Good evening, Dr. King.
Good evening. Let me say I'm certainly delighted to be here today. Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin, for having me.
Okay. And we're delighted to have you. It has been 57 years since you left us, and it's been over 6 decades since Emmett Till's death. Now, you were there, you were around during Emmett Till's death, and he was killed at the hand of a vicious mob. What was the feeling at that time?
Well, there was a feeling of sadness, of course, and we were really kind of blown away with the process and what had transpired. And really, Emmett Till's death was what really kind of led into the movement and made a significant part of the movement. We were in 1965, of course, we were in Selma, Alabama. And all those things that kind of tied around it was what caused us to really focus on what was going on. When we're dealing with protests, the true piece of protest is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation about the injustices that were going on. So he was a martyr, and it really, of course, you know, his mother wanted to have an open casket so that people could see what was really going on. And I think that was significant even with Birmingham, where they saw the children being hosed with fire hoses. And those things really get to the conscience of people and make them think, why are people doing this to peaceful protesters? But with Emmett Till, that was a part of history, sad part of history, but we were able to take that and wring some good out of that evil.
Okay. I don't want to dwell too much on why you were here, so I want to talk about some things since you've been gone. But of course, the youngest person to speak at the 63 March on Washington was one of your young proteges, John Lewis.
Yeah.
I understand that he is with you now. So what was that reception like just a few weeks ago with John Lewis entering the pearly gates?
Well, I'll tell you, it was really magnificent, you know, to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord, and for him to be with us was just exciting in heaven, because we understood that what got him into heaven was the good trouble that he did on earth. And so it was a wonderful reception. We had an exciting time, and we were able to talk and kind of talk about things that had transpired and look down on earth and just see what is going on today. And hopefully what we did in the past will have a great impact on what happens in the future.
What's your favorite earthly memory of John Lewis?
My favorite earthly memory of John Lewis was his courage to face the officers in Selma. I always kind of see that, even though it was a terrible time and people were beaten and they were tear gassed and ran over by horses, just the courage that he had within inside of him to be able to face those things and face it in a nonviolent way. And I always just admire and have admired the courage that Dr. John Lewis had.
One of your favorite songs and one of your favorite singers is your Precious Lord, and one of your favorite singers is Aretha. And she left us a few years ago. What are you guys doing now? What are y'all doing with Aretha up there now?
Man, I'm gonna tell you, as soon as Aretha got here, I mean, the very moment Aretha got here, they made her the worship leader. She was a worship director, and she got on that organ, and the angels of heaven just started dancing around. I'll tell you, we had a good time from the moment that she got there. And so it's exciting. I was very humbled to just be in her presence once again.
You remember the song that she sang? Any particular song that she...
Precious Lord.
Ooh, go over it.
I tell you, take my hand. That was one of my favorite songs, and every time I would ask her, she'd sing it for me. And I understand she sung that at the funeral as well.
Yes. She was at your funeral and she sang that. In 1993, through more force and pride, and rather than wanting to really do it, but in 1993, you were given a national holiday. The third Monday in September, in January rather, third Monday in January is a holiday dedicated to Martin Luther King Jr. What do you think about having a holiday? The only not many people get that honor. What do you think?
Well, I was very honored. I was not expecting that, and I think that was in '83.
83, okay. President Reagan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, and I think the first celebration was in '86. And I was just kind of blown away. I didn't really, look for that. I was just trying to do God's will. And I understand Coretta, who's here with me now, she was very instrumental in making that happen. And President Carter was later on, was very significant in bringing about the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park. So as you know, I don't look for any awards or anything, recognition, but I would hope that people would take that day, since they have made it that day, and really do something that makes a change and makes a difference. I've always preached love as the basis of everything, and I would hope that people would, I see they say it's a day on, not a day off, and I think it should remain that way, as a day on, to really do something in your neighborhood, your community, and make a difference in other people's lives. I've always said that the question will be, what did you do for others? Not what you did for King, not what you did for anyone else, but what did you do for other folk? And I think that's the crux of it.
When before you died, and some people say you had a premonition of your death, but you did make us one of your speeches talked about when you have your funeral, you don't want them to talk too long. Could you give us remind us of what you said?
Well, I said that was exactly 2 months before the funeral. That was on February the 4th of 1968. That was my last sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, if any of you around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. And I want them to say that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I wanted them to be able to say that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life 7 others. I want you to say on that day that I did try to feed the hungry, that I did try to clothe the naked, that I did try to visit those who are in prison, those who are sick. And I want you to be able to say that I did try to love and serve humanity. And so if you want to say that I was a drum major, which some people say, well, say that I was a drum major for justice, a drum major for peace. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as they pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, if I can bring salvation to the world once wrought, if I can spread the messages the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. I say, yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side, but not for any political reason or ambition, but I just want to be there in love and in truth and in justice and in commitment to others so that we can make of this whole world a new world.
And that was delivered 2 months prior to your funeral.
Yeah, yes, it was. And I understand that they played it at the funeral.
Yes. Now, some 40 years after your death, something happened in America that took us all back, opened the doors. There was a young man named Barack Hussein Obama. I don't know whether you had any premonition about him or not, but he was the first Black president. I'm quite sure John Lewis and others have told you about him. What do you think about America and having the first Black president?
Well, I think it's wonderful. I've always said, well, I think I said in the mid 60s, or late 60s, mid 60s, I said that I believe that there would be a Black president. I had felt that it would be about 20, 25 years that there would be a Black president. Now, I also mentioned the fact that there were certainly individuals who were qualified to be president at that time. There were many people who had the instinct, who had the integrity, and who had everything that it took to be the president of the United States. But because of certain mores and certain discriminatory acts and the way people were, I knew that it would take some time, but I felt that it would be maybe somewhere in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And so to see in 2008 that America had elected a Black president was just a very significant move. And it showed that America was in some ways changing, and they weren't looking at it, they were looking at it from the person in many instances. We know racism is deeply rooted, but there are some great people who look at people as human and not the color of their skin. Our color is what caused us, what became a stigma. And so certainly I was very excited, and I certainly believe that we will continue to have people in elected positions, particularly in that position as president, who are Black and who are very qualified.
Okay. Dr. King, I know you guys in heaven, you don't have watches or anything like that, but you do have fun. So I'm not going to hold you too long, but I want to know, can I sort of, before I finish some of my questions, I want to ask you, can we revisit in the future if people ask me, can you come back? Would you be willing to come back periodically and talk with us? I
certainly will. I certainly would love to. And I would be open to that opportunity.
Okay. I know we had a man on the moon. It's not a big deal to you now, but right a few months after you had your funeral in June, I think, of July 6th, 8th, we had the man on the moon. Then we had the you were around during the Vietnam War, which was the longest war at one time, but now had the Afghan War, and you had some thoughts about war, didn't you?
I certainly did. I was always against war. I didn't feel that it would bring about any kind of significant change. I always felt that in order to bring about a positive change or a nonviolent change, that it must be done through nonviolence. You can't think that you can use peaceful means or violent means for violent ends. That's what it brings about. But one of the things that this war brought about is I would always go out to the young people and I would tell the young Black boys and I would really explain to them about the rioting and that we don't need Molotov cocktails and we don't need all of this violence to bring about the solutions. Mm-hmm. And one thing that they responded to me, which really made me think, and rightfully so, they said, well, Dr. King, isn't that what America's doing? America's doing that in Vietnam. They're using violence to bring about change. So how can you talk to us about not using violence when the very country that we live in is initiating violence as a means of coming up with a solution? And so I had to really think about that. And I said I couldn't really move forward until I addressed the violence that was going on in America.
There has been so many movements during your time. You know, of course, you were head of SCLC. Then the Black Panthers were around. But today we have, and John Lewis may have mentioned this to you, Black Lives Matter, BLM.
Yes.
And you may have heard of something after John Lewis may have shared some things with you. What do you think about that movement, Black Lives Matter?
Well, based on what I know, I feel certainly that Black lives do matter. I know the response, he says, has always been all lives matter. And I understand what people may be saying, but first of all, I believe that we have to distinguish between Black Lives Matter, the organization, and Black Lives Matter, the phrase, and what it actually means, because people tie them together and say, well, the organization is doing this, but Black Lives Matter is not saying that no other lives matter. It's basically saying Black lives are being treated as if they don't matter. And so we certainly have to deal with that issue. To say all lives matter, someone told me, is to respond to, it's just like somebody coming in your community or your house being on fire, and then the firemen come to douse it, but you the neighbor, and you say, well, douse my house first, or my house matters too. Yes, but your house is not on fire. It's like my wife asking me, baby, do you love me? And I say, well, I love all of God's children. No, that's not the case. What I'm asking you, do you love me? So when we look at it from that context, we have to really look at what they're saying and really look at the context of where we are as a nation. So Black lives certainly do matter. And I'm always, I love to see the young people protesting and really getting involved, doing it in a peaceful manner and really getting involved. And I think it always makes a statement that we demand change. And I see them doing that today, and I really am moved by that presence.
Some people have said, and you can see it from both viewpoints, but someone have said that with the death of some of the young men who have been killed recently because of police brutality, someone said that it's akin to Emmett Till's death and the motivation that police brutality has to end. Do you see a connection between the force that really motivated Blacks and other folk during Emmett Till's death with the recent police deaths killing the Black men in America?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the very same context in which it aroused the conscience of people. And when you see that, as we were talking about earlier, when you see that, it makes you stop and it makes you think. I see a difference, though, in the movement today I see more white individuals who seem to be getting the understanding and waking up and saying this is about humanity, because they see a human being being treated in that manner. So I certainly believe that it is in line with the movement before, when Emmett Till was killed, and then we see George Floyd being hung, and we're seeing, you know, a young man by the name of Will Smith, what John Lewis was telling me, they asked him the question and they said, do you believe that racism is getting worse? And he said, no, it's getting filmed. And what he was saying in essence is, this is not something new. It's always been going on. But now that we have the technological advances that you all have today, they are able to see it. And that's the difference from then and now. And then more people, justice is more of a reality than it was then.
You know, I was going to ask you about that. If you had social media 50 years ago, 57 years ago, or because it's been seen everywhere. If you had social media, Facebook and YouTube, and would that have enhanced things in during that time, or?
Certainly, I believe it would. The more people that you can get to, the more people that you can reach out to. But I really don't know, because we had such a wonderful a way of getting things out. And I'll tell you, the women of the struggle were very paramount. They were the ones who wrote up the leaflets. I'm speaking of the bus boycott. They wrote up the leaflets. They put them out, they produced them, they went out in the areas and told people not to ride the buses. And so when I look at what is going on today, I see where they have more technological advances and they can reach more people much more quickly. I don't know if it would have been any greater if we had that technology. I think it allowed us to physically get out and reach the people.
You said I think I heard you say in one of your messages, and correct me if I'm wrong, but someone asked you what era of time would you love to live in? And you sort of shared many different times, but I think you ended up with where you are now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so share that with me, because with people now who are saying, there are Blacks who will say, I'm leaving America, going to, you know, other places, and I wish I lived in another time. But you said even during the 60s, that's where you wanted to be. Why was that?
Absolutely, because I saw all that was going on, and that was the very last speech that I gave, the mountaintop in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was saying, I was imagining God taking me to the beginning of time and looking out through history and say, what period of history? So I went through all the different periods that were great, wonderful periods. But I wanted to be in that period because I saw what was unfolding, and I saw how the difference that was being made in the work that we were doing. So I was just very proud to be a part of the moment, to see what was transpiring and the difference that people were making, and that people were standing up and saying, I'm not going to allow this to happen. We're going to do whatever's necessary to bring about the significant change. So while all these other periods were great, I was asking God if you would allow me to live just a few years beyond the second half of this of the century, that I would be happy. And that was really my mountaintop, was to live in that period and be a part of the change that was taking place.
That last thing I want to ask you before I ask you to just share a few your thoughts. You mentioned great women. We have a vice president nominee from the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris. John Lewis, I'm quite sure, may have shared something with you about her. What do you think?
I think it's amazing. I understand it's the very first Black woman to be on a major party ticket. And I think it's amazing. She certainly has the credentials. She certainly has the integrity. She certainly has the experience to be a great vice president, and she has experience in what it needs to be the president, in which I understand she may be in the not too distant future. So I just really applaud really those who are supporting her and the work that she has done. Yeah, I understand it goes way back. But it's really good to see a Black woman. It's really just good to see Black people, and really good to see people of uplift and of integrity to take that position. So I'm very happy for her. I see her. I understand elections are coming up in November, and I see her being the vice president of the United States.
Mhm. Yes, they are coming up. What encouragement would you give to those who may think that my vote doesn't count?
Your vote does count. I recall a young man, I can't remember his name, but somebody asked him the question. It was during a press conference, and they said, with Reverend Al Sharpton it was, and they asked him the question. They said, well, what do you say to people who say my vote doesn't matter? And he said, well, I would rather vote and have to fight for my vote to be counted than not vote and assure that my vote is not counted. And I would say to each and every individual, I hope that they would look back in 1965 and earlier, when Blacks were not able to vote. They had no voting power. And I would hope that they would look at the people who were in Selma, Alabama, who marched across that bridge, like John Lewis, who led that march that we spoke about earlier. Who is here with me now. I'm on his interview, and see what people did before us to really make this vote possible. It is it's a responsibility. And as John Lewis will always say, it's almost sacred. It's something that we should cherish, and that we should go out by the numbers, vote early. I understand you can vote early now. I hope that they do make it a holiday, but I would encourage people to go out and vote, try to vote early, and encourage other people to vote. Get you at least 10 or 15 people and make it a commitment that you're going to make sure that they vote, and call on them and talk to them, make sure they're registered. And the education piece is very essential as well, because a lot of people don't believe, for instance, that prior felons can vote, but they can. And there are certain stipulations, but I believe in the last election, I can't remember the number they were saying, but several 100,000 felons who were eligible to vote did not vote because they didn't believe that they could. So I think the educational piece is very imperative, that we educate the people, that we register to vote, and we go out and vote.
Okay. Well, now, I don't know whether John Lewis has shared with you about the COVID-19 pandemic we're in. I know in heaven, you guys don't worry about stuff like that. Or the kind of political climate with our current president. Any thought have you heard anything about that? Is any of that news reached your shores?
Yes, it has. COVID has been, we understand, and there's certainly many individuals who are here who had that disease and that virus. And
180,000 Americans have died. Can you believe that?
180,000 Americans. And I understand it was that more could have been done about it. And it didn't seem that those in leadership were very concerned. They felt that, but they were concerned about their money, because they moved their money to other banks and to other interests because they knew what was going to transpire. I think it's a sad situation, but I am optimistic, and I think that many times things like this happen that allows us to stop and to really reflect and to look at God. I think oftentimes he does that so that we can really understand and let the church be the church. We look at the church as a building, but we understand that the church is within us. And sometimes things transpire for us to stop and think and be still, relax, and know that God is God. So I'm very optimistic, and to all the families who have lost those from this deadly virus, we send our condolences, and we just hope that people will take this as an opportunity to really bring about some change, and our prayers continue to be with you.
Dr. King, it has been a pleasure of mine to just hear your thoughts, and even though you haven't been present on this side of Jordan, as they say in the church, at the Black church, but you've been well informed, apparently, and we thank you. And I really want to get your thoughts on some other things, but we don't have time on this broadcast. But would you like to just sort of, we haven't heard you give us in so long. We haven't heard your voice in so long. We hear recordings, we see tapes, we have videos, and we have impersonators, but we don't have you. So give us some words before we close out.
Some words, or did you want to?
Well, give us one of your favorite messages or speeches or poems.
Well, one of my favorite pieces was always when I talk about love. And people used to ask me about it all the time. They would say, Dr. King, what do you mean when you say love these people? They are beating on us. They are bombing our houses and threatening our children. What in the world you mean when you say love these people? And I always have to stop and try to define the meaning of love in this area. And interestingly enough, Greek philosophy comes to our aid at this point. There are 3 words in the Greek language for love. One of them is the word eros. Eros, as I explained before, is a sort of aesthetic love. Philosopher Plato, he talks about it a great deal in his dialogues. It's a yearning of the soul for the realm of divine. So it has come to us to mean a sort of romantic love. And so we all know about eros. We've either experienced it or we've read about it in the beauties of literature. And then there's philia, which is another level of love. It's an intimate affection between personal friends. On this level, we love because we are loved. We love people that we like. This is friendship. But then the Greek language talks about agape. And agape is more than friendship. It's not something affectionate. Agape is an understanding, a creative, redemptive goodwill to all men. It is an overflowing love that seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is a love of God operating in the human heart. And so when one rises to love on this level, he loves man not because he likes him, but he loves every man because God loves him, and he was made in the image of God. And so he rises to the level of hating the system rather than the individual who's caught up in that system. He loves the person, even though he may hate the evil deed. And I believe, Pastor McLaughlin, that this is what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. And I'm so happy that they didn't say like your enemies, because it's pretty difficult to like some people. It's difficult to like people bombing your homes and threatening your children and kicking you about. But Jesus says to love them. Love is greater than like. Love is an overflowing, systematic piece within us that gives us the courage to look beyond the person and see who the person was made in the image of.
Well said, Dr. King. I know we'll be speaking to you soon. And one good thing about it, they do have cell phones in heaven, so I will be calling you. But
I know you got me on speed dial. I'll be waiting for your call.
All right, thank you so much, and God bless you. And tell everyone we say hello.
We'll do that. Thank you.
All right. This is Pastor McLaughlin speaking from New Life Live channel, and thank you for joining us for this interview with Dr. King. There'll be more coming. God bless. Have a good week.
God bless.